He is a man that does not mind standing up for working class people. He's a man that has no problem shaking up the status quo even in his own party. And he's embarking on this race for President of the United States. He has visited me at Nan and we've talked at length. And he is not progressive in title, he is progressive and practical in action. And I want you to hear him on his first day of campaigning for President of the United States from the state of Ohio, Congressman Tim Ryan.
Thanks, Rev. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Great to be with Senator Klobuchar and Senator Gillibrand and our new colleague, Representative McBath. I gave her a promotion already. And Congressman Jeffries, I don't know if he's here yet, but before I was running for president, Congressman Jeffries would say, "You getting in? You going to get in?" And I'd say, "Buy low, sell high, man. Buy low, sell high." So when he gets here and you see him, you say, "Congressman Ryan said, buy low, sell high." I want to just tell you a little bit about who I am and where I come from. My name is Tim Ryan. I come from Northeast Ohio. I represent very gritty industrial towns like Youngstown, Ohio, and Akron, Ohio. And I will tell you, I grew up in a town where we didn't know a whole lot of black people. I grew up in an Irish-Italian family, Catholic school. And when I got elected to Congress and ran, I represent the city of Youngstown. And the city of Youngstown is 50% African American. And the number one lesson that I learned is how much I did not know about the experiences of people of color in a community that was not that far from my own. Wow. And I set upon my own personal journey to try to understand and to try to listen. And a story that I learned over the years that illustrates a little bit about why we are where we are today. And it's a story of a rebellion that happened in 1676. It's called Bacon's Rebellion. You may have heard of it. And prior to Bacon's Rebellion, the British landlords who had all of the wealth and all of the power had divided up the society. And it was the rich and it was the poor. And that happened for so long and became so untenable that all the poor people got upset and they had Bacon's Rebellion. They didn't quite pull it off. So the idea from the British landlords on how to prevent that from ever happening again, all the poor people getting together and threatening the system, threatening the oligarchs, was we're going to divide people by race. Black, white, brown. And we're going to keep them divided. And we're going to pass laws in colonial Virginia in the 17th century that kept us divided. And that led to slavery and then Jim Crow and all the rest. And here we are today, how many years later, still suffering from being divided in the 17th century. Still experiencing structural racism in our criminal justice system, in our education system, in our economic system. And there are leaders today that throw gasoline on the fires of division and use every opportunity to keep all of us divided. Because when we come together, when we unite, we are a threat to the most powerful and the wealthy. And so our job and my job running to be President of the United States is to make sure that we bring this country together. We unite this country so we can solve the problems that are facing all people in our country. And I will say that the economic system today is not serving many, many people in our country. I want you to look at venture capital, the big, powerful money that will scale up business, that will create jobs. 80% of that money goes to 3 states, California, New York, and Massachusetts. 9% of it goes to women, and less than 2% go to people of color. Less than 2%. And what I'm saying we need to do is not say we just need some centralized program in Washington, D.C. that's going to solve all of our problems, but that we come together and recognize that we need a new and better government, we need a new and better private sector, we need a new and better workforce, we need a new and better criminal justice system, and then together we can rebuild and forge the new kind of politics we want in the United States of America. They try to pit the workers against each other. I see this all the time. Who's the white worker, who's the black worker, and the black worker and the white worker shouldn't be working together, and the black worker and the brown worker and the brown worker and the white worker and immigrants. Divide, 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 divide. And meanwhile, our problems don't get solved. I will be offering in the next coming weeks an urban Marshall Plan in which we rehabilitate and reinvest into the urban cores in the United States of America. We clean up our towns. We get rid of blight. We get rid of lead paint in the homes that affects our kids' ability to learn. We make sure that there's not lead in the pipes. We make sure that teachers who teach our kids in the inner city get a pay raise. We have so many communities around here where there hasn't been a pay raise for a teacher in 9 or 10 years. We have a lot of work to do, but we can't let the powers that be continue to divide us. And I will give you one quick example about what we can do to rebuild and reinvest in our communities if we have the proper leadership. When you look at the future, you look at the future industries, like electric vehicles, for example. I represent a town that just lost 1,700 jobs to a General Motors facility. What's the future? I don't want a president of the United States that's going to yell at somebody, tweet at somebody. I want a president who's going to pull us together, put a plan together for us, and show us how you're going to help improve our lives. And I believe there are opportunities in the economy today like electric vehicles. There are 2 million electric vehicles today. By 2030, there's going to be 30 million electric vehicles made somewhere in the world. I want those vehicles to be made in the United States. I want them to be made in communities that have seen distress. I want people of color to make them. I remember when I first started going to politics and getting into politics, one of the first meetings I went to, Rev, was an A. Philip Randolph chapter in Youngstown, Ohio. Because we can't be the party of either we're for identity politics or we're for the economy. We are not the party of or. We are the party of and. We are the party of addition. And we need to bring everybody together to solve these big problems that we have in the United States. And I took a bunch of venture capitalists on a tour in a bus, rich people from Silicon Valley. And we brought them to Youngstown, we brought them to Akron, we brought them to Detroit, we brought them to Flint, and we brought him to South Bend, Indiana. And we said, we have ideas too in our communities. You have the money, we have the ideas. And if we're going to rebuild the United States, it needs to be in these communities too, that have been unplugged for 40 years. We need that investment in Youngstown, Ohio, and in communities of color, because there's no way we're going to be able to move forward if we stay divided. Periodically, I'll go on a visit through Youngstown or Akron, and I'll have one of the local councilmen or councilwomen take me around. And a few months back, I went into the toughest part of the city of Youngstown and the toughest neighborhood. We have an opiate crisis and crime and all the rest. And Julius, who was the councilman, he said, hey, you got to go meet Mrs. Duke. So we pull into the driveway, and here comes Mrs. Duke. She was out pulling weeds out of the cracks in the driveway. And she was surprised to see me, you know, Congressman just showing up at her door. And it was hot, and it was in the summertime. And her son comes around the back of the house when I got there. He had paint on his arm, and he had a little spray bottle. He was spraying for ants. And the house was beautiful, but all the houses around her home were dilapidated. The grass was growing. It's a tough neighborhood. And so I go into her house, and it's immaculate. There's a beautiful marble mantel. Everything is in place. It's clean. And she starts telling me how she can't go drink a cold glass of water on the porch once it gets dark because the neighborhood is so tough. And her husband worked for the sheriff's department and had a good retirement. And he passed away a few years before. And she said, I asked my son, how do we get out of this neighborhood? Maybe we should try to sell the house. And so her son looked into how much they could sell the house for. Number came back. $4,000. Mrs. Duke could sell her house in Youngstown for $4,000. This woman is trapped in a neighborhood that is unsafe. She and her husband have done everything right. They worked hard, they played by the rules, and yet our country has let her down. Our society has let her down, and all of the Mrs. Dukes around the United States. And I'm pledging to you, as your president, that I will make sure every day that I walk into the Oval Office that Mrs. Duke will not just be on my mind, she'll be in my heart. And we are going to conduct business in a way that is not a quick fix. We don't need a superstar. We need someone who's going to roll up their sleeves and get to work and get the job done for Mrs. Duke and everyone else around the country. I pledge that to you. That is my commitment to you, to join you in all of your hard work. And I will end with a story about Muhammad Ali. Because you can't give a good political speech a day after you announce for president without talking about Muhammad Ali. So Ali was walking down the street, I think it was in Kentucky, and someone walks up to him and says, "Champ, I saw one of your fights." And he said, "Oh, no kidding." He said, "Yeah, I saw you got knocked down, and you know, it was unbelievable. I was a kid." And Champ said, "Wasn't me." He said, "No, I swear to God, it was the greatest moment of my life. I was there and you fought. I mean, you got knocked down, but you know, it's like great. And then my dad took me to the fight and he said, wasn't my fight. He said, no, Champ, it was your fight. I mean, you got knocked down, but it was your fight. Champ says, I ain't never been knocked down. He said, I'm either up or I'm getting up. And I'm telling you that the United States is never knocked down. We're either up or we're getting up. Communities of color are never knocked down. We're either up or we're getting up. The workers in America are never knocked down. They're either up or they're getting up. My name is Tim Ryan. I'm running for President of the United States. I want your vote. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah.
All right. Johnny, we got that. Doors of the church is open, up or getting up. You know, Johnny and I go on the road, we can use some of this stuff.